Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a blue-green Emerge deck that features a lot of the Emerge creatures from Eldritch Moon, and of course it's also updated with Kaladesh. So here you can see one of the Emerge creatures. So the idea behind the deck is that we play a bunch of 2-drops and 3-drops with Enter the Battlefield abilities, so we get some value out of them, and then we can sacrifice those 2 and 3-drops to our Emerge creatures, so we can cast them around turn 4 and get some value from the cast trigger on the Emerge creatures. And of course we also get a nice big creature in play around turn 4. So that's the idea behind the deck. So let's take a look at the entire deck here, starting out with 2 copies of Oath of Nissa. Since our deck is mostly creatures, this can help us find a creature we need. If we need more cheap creatures, it can find those. If we need more Emerge creatures, it can find those as well. And we also have some planeswalkers that Oath of Nissa can find. And worst case, if we need a land, Oath of Nissa can help us there as well. We have Deathcap Cultivator, which helps us ramp out our bigger creatures, and is also a creature we can emerge onto, and can still provide mana the same turn that we emerge onto it, so it can give us a nice boost. We have Sylvan Advocate, which is more of a late game card and not really a creature we want to sacrifice, but can be a pretty good creature at closing out the game, synergizes nicely with our creature lands, and with a new Nissa that turns lands into 5/5 creatures, which will be 7/7 creatures thanks to the Advocate, as long as we have 6 or more lands in play. Duskwatch Recruiter, since our deck is mostly creatures, the activated ability will often find us a creature, and can also transform into the Howler, which makes our creatures cheaper and also helps when emerging, since it also reduces the emerge cost. Elvish Visionary is a nice 2-drop since it draws us a card and we don't mind sacrificing the Visionary afterwards. Same with Primal Druid, another creature that we don't mind sacrificing since it will ramp us and get us a basic land into play tapped, and we can also just chump block with it and get a land that way. Nissa Vastwood Seer gets us a land up front when she enters a battlefield, and if we hit enough lands she transforms into Sage Animist, so also a creature we would prefer not to sacrifice. Same with Tireless Tracker, which provides lots of card advantage whenever we play a land or a land enters a battlefield, since we can get a number of clue tokens which provide us card advantage and grow the Tireless Tracker. A copy of Reclamation Sage to deal with artifacts and enchantments, and afterwards we don't mind sacrificing the Sage since it's just a 2/1 creature. Then Foul Emissary is the ideal card to emerge onto, since when he enters the battlefield we get to look at the top cards of our library and search for a creature, which of course our deck is full of creatures, and then when we emerge onto the Foul Emissary we get a 3/2 Eldrazi horror creature token to replace the now sacrificed Foul Emissary. Pilgrim's Eye is another creature that we don't mind sacrificing since it also searches a land when we enter the battlefield with it. Filigree Familiar, another one that we don't mind sacrificing, gains us 2 life when it enters the battlefield and draws us a card when it leaves the battlefield when it dies. Then, as you can see here, we skip the 4-drops since our Emerge creatures will often be cast around turn 4, or we might just cast another 3-drop around turn 4. So we get to our 5-drops where we have Verdurous Gearhulk, which is a 4/4 with trample that puts 4 +1/+1 counters on our creatures, so has a nice enter the battlefield ability, but the body is still pretty relevant, so could sacrifice it later on if we put the counters on other creatures, but it's still a nice 4/4 creature. We have some planeswalkers in Jace Unraveler of Secrets, which gives us some much needed interaction in this deck to return creatures to the opponent's hand, because we're not playing any removal spells otherwise. So this is a way to interact with the opponent's creatures and can also provide some card advantage while we hide behind our many creatures. Nissa Vital Force can turn lands into creatures, can return cards from our graveyard to our hand, and most of our cards will be permanent since those are lands and creatures, and can also make an emblem to draw some more cards. Woodland Bellower is a nice one since we have lots of green 3-drops that we can find. Even 2-drops like Sylvan Advocate are a nice find with Woodland Bellower. Reclamation Sage also comes to mind. And then of course the emerge creatures. Wretched Gryff is only 6 mana to emerge onto, so if we sacrifice a 3-drop it only costs us 3 mana. If we sacrifice a 2-drop only costs 4 mana and draws us a card when it gets cast. And is a 3/4 flying, which blocks Smuggler's Copters nicely. We also have Elder Deep-Fiend, which is another way to interact with the opponent, since if we emerge the Deep-Fiend, that also has flash, so we can do this at instant speed. We can tap up to 4 target permanents from the opponent, so that includes creatures and lands, for example. And then finally, Decimator of the Provinces is a nice finisher, pretty expensive to emerge, but when we do cast the Decimator, all our creatures get +2/+2 and trample until end of turn, and it's also a 7/7 with trample and haste by itself, so a great way to finish the game once the board is stalled. Then our mana base, 6 islands, 9 forests, 2 lumbering falls to go with the Sylvan Advocates of course, 2 copies of Hinterland Harbor, and then 4 Evolving Wilds to go with the Tireless Trackers. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks pretty good. We've got some cheap creatures and an emerge creature, so should be able to curve out nicely. We don't have double blue yet for the Elder Deep-Fiend, but between the draw steps and Elvish Visionary we hopefully find a second blue source. And I think we might lead with Elvish Visionary here according to what we draw. Opponent on Mardu colors, so it could be some sort of control deck. Foul Emissary is also a decent pickup. So given that we really want a second blue source, I think Visionary gives us the best chance. Could also go with the Cultivator into Foul Emissary, since we might find another emerge creature that doesn't require double blue. So a lot of options here. I think I lead with Visionary though. If our opponent is a more controlling deck, then I don't mind the Visionary dying, while Cultivator doesn't give us any immediate value. So let's see if our opponent has a 3-drop. Liliana would be pretty bad here, since she could just kill all our 1-toughness creatures, but looks like no Liliana, so that's good. So I think we just attack for 1 and then play out one of our 3-drops. And I think we go with the Foul Emissary to try and find another emerge creature if possible. Alright, another Visionary is not bad. So next turn we could go Visionary plus Cultivator, but we do have to keep sweeper effects in mind, since Mardu has basically all the sweepers. And alright, there we go, Wretched Gryff is a nice one. So we can attack for 2 and then emerge Wretched Gryff off of the Foul Emissary. And our creatures might get hit by something like a Languish, but we still drew a card off of basically every creature we've cast. So from the cast trigger we draw a card, and there's our second blue source. And we can play that here and say go. I fully expect all our creatures to die here, but if not, we have a pretty decent board presence. Alright, just a Grasp of Darkness on the Wretched Gryff. That's not too bad. So we still have 2 creatures in play. Decimator is a nice one to have access to. So let's attack for 4. And while we could emerge the Deep-Fiend off of the Visionary, I think I want to add a couple more creatures to the board before doing that, since normally you would be able to flash in the Elder Deep-Fiend on the opponent's upkeep, but since in Magic Duels there's no real upkeep phase, that doesn't quite work out as well. Could still keep the Elder Deep-Fiend in hand though, and maybe use its end of turn during the opponent's turn, and then we would have a 5/6 and a 3/2 in play. And then maybe we can do some damage with the Decimator the following turn. Don't hate that. And then next turn we could also just cast the Woodland Bellower. So yeah, actually I think I like using the Elder Deep-Fiend here. As soon as we can, we have to consider flashing in the Deep-Fiend, maybe tap down some of the opponent's lands. Instead the opponent has an Ob Nixilis, which is fine. So they're gonna kill the Eldrazi Horror. Alright, so we don't actually get any value from emerging the Deep-Fiend here, unfortunately. But I think we still do it off of the Elvish Visionary just to put a 5/6 in play that can kill. And here it doesn't really matter what we tap down, since they're already tapped. But I guess we can tap down a Planeswalker. That's a fun thing to do every once in a while. So we didn't get any value from the Deep-Fiend, unfortunately, but that's fine. So here we can kill the Ob Nixilis, I think, or we could just go for the opponent's life total. But I think denying them the extra draw step seems relevant, since if we just emerge the Decimator, we only hit for 7. So I think we can maybe kill our opponent next turn if they don't have a sweeper. So kill Ob Nixilis. And now we have to decide if we want to play around Planar Outburst specifically or not, since Planar Outburst would be able to kill our larger creatures here, while something like Languish will not. And given that our opponent played a Grasp into Ob Nixilis, I don't think they have a Planar Outburst, so I think it's pretty safe to play the Woodland Bellower and get something like a Sylvan Advocate. Could also get a Foul Emissary to hedge our bets a bit in case our opponent does have a sweeper, which I guess is maybe the best option here. So we at least get an Enter Battlefield ability here going, get another Deathcap. And then next turn we can emerge onto the Foul Emissary with the Decimator, and that should be more than enough. Just hoping our opponent doesn't have a Planar Outburst specifically. It's gonna be a Nahiri, which can exile the Elder Deep-Fiend. Alright. If our opponent doesn't have any interaction for 2 mana, they're still dead here. So emerging the Decimator is 9 mana, minus 3 is 6. So we can't cast anything else besides the Decimator here. So I think we just go for it. And hope our opponent doesn't have something like a Blast Alliance. So we're just gonna go for the opponent here. Alright, looks like we got there. On to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks decent. We've got some plays to make. Visionary hopefully finds us land number 3. Primal Druid can maybe also help us find a 3rd land. And then we have 2 3-drops to get us going. Hopefully Foul Emissary finds us an emerge creature. Alright, could play Evolving Wilds here to make sure that we hit 3rd land for Emissary. Yeah, I think that's fine. Get our island. Alright, we'll take Brawler from the opponent, so we might be facing an aggressive red-green energy deck. Think we go with the Pilgrim's Eye here actually, since I want to make sure we keep hitting our land drops. And I think I'll go with an island even though we have only green cards in hand, since we do need double blue at some point. So if the opponent gives the Voltaic Brawler Trample, there's no point in chum blocking. Lathnu Hellion, on the other hand, I don't mind chum blocking. Alright, so the opponent does give the Brawler Trample. We'll just chump here to preserve our life total, and the Pilgrim's Eye isn't gonna do much anyways, unless we were to top deck an emerge creature. And Primal Druid's gonna be actually pretty good here, since it's a roadblock that also ramps us. I guess we should have played Visionary first, in case we drew something better, but I doubt we can find something better in this spot than a Primal Druid. And if we can chump with the Primal Druid, we can actually play Woodland Bellower next turn. Sage of Shayla's Claim is gonna give 3 energy, so they can keep paying for the Hellion, which we actually don't really mind. So we'll just chump here. Get a forest. And Filigree Familiar, also not bad. So we could go Woodland Bellower, find us maybe Sylvan Advocate, maybe Tireless Tracker. Could also just go Emissary plus Familiar, and then next turn play Bellower, get a Tireless Tracker and play a land to get a clue right away. And then also play Oath of Nissa. I think I like that slightly better. So let's start by casting the Emissary, since we might find something that changes our plan. And Reclamation Sage probably isn't going to do much in this matchup, so I think I'll take the Duskwatch. Then play Familiar, which can also just chum block and draw us a card. And then next turn we can stabilize with Woodland Bellower. Another Brawler. Everyone getting in there. So the opponent might have a number of pump spells here for single red. Titan Strength, Build to Smash come to mind. I think I'll just make conservative blocks here. Could put 2 in front of the Brawler, for example. But I think this is fine. Down to 10, find a Decimator. And the opponent's gonna keep paying, so they're slowly running out of energy at least. And Jace is decent, but I think we can wait a turn for Jace. Actually, we may have played the wrong land last turn, since in order to play Oath of Nissa after we play Woodland Bellower, this island is not gonna work, since we need to get the land drop for Tireless Tracker. So that's something I may have messed up, but it's probably not gonna cost us too much. Could also get a Sylvan Advocate, since we might need the extra large creature. That's also vigilant. So do have some options, and we already have Duskwatch and Jace for card advantage, so maybe it's just better to get Sylvan Advocate, but I guess we can just play Oath of Nissa first, since we're just gonna play the Woodland Bellower here. And Wretched Gryff is good, Nissa is also decent. I think I'll go with the Wretched Gryff, since if the board does stall out, then this is a nice way to keep attacking. And I think I'll just go with the Bellower. Make as many creatures as possible. And we don't really want to chump with Foul Emissary, since we have the Wretched Gryff that we can emerge onto the Foul Emissary. Opponent only on 3 lands, but they do still have 6 cards in hand. So we have to try and quickly turn the corner from being on defense to being the aggressor. Opponent can't pump the Brawlers, but they probably have a number of pump spells, is my guess. So if they have double Titan Strength, we want to make sure to block the Hellion. So I think I want to block here, I want to block here, and now double Titan Strength doesn't kill us. And if they give this one +3/+3, it still dies. Yeah, I think this is fine. If they also have a 3rd pump spell for single green, I guess we're dead. But I really don't want to just chump with a Foul Emissary, so I think I'll take that risk. Alright, there's a Blossoming Defense, so they might have 2 pump spells. Alright, they're just using them over there, that's fine. Alright, so we're just trading creatures here. That's fine. We're not dying. And we still have the Foul Emissary. Elder Deep-Fiend is also interesting. I guess we can attack for 1 and then emerge the Wretched Gryff. Final land. So I guess we can play Jace and start plussing. Could have also played Duskwatch and activated it as another option. Nissa. Yeah, I'll take a Nissa. If the opponent attacks and uses energy, I think I'll just... Alright, looks like our opponent's had enough. A larger than life, so alright, the opponent must have also Electrostatic Pummeler in their deck if they're playing this many pump spells. They are going after Jace, so we can't kill the Pummeler here even if we double block, but we could save the Jace. Do we want to save the Jace is the question, or do we just let it die? I think letting it die is actually fine here. Yeah, let's just let our Jace be. And now we have to try and turn the corner quickly. So what happens if we emerge the Decimator? Then we attack for 7/5. So not quite lethal, so I think we have to wait a turn. And instead we can play Nissa. Plus on a land. and play Duskwatch. Let's see, 11. I guess we can also just emerge the Deep-Fiend just to make sure. So there's no real need to play the Duskwatch Recruiter here. If there was an upkeep step, then this would have been a lot better, but I guess their opponent going straight to combat also helps. So emerge onto this, step 1, 2, 3, 4. And no blossoming defense from the opponent to protect the Brawler. So now we get to untap and we basically have lethal on board, but I guess we might as well show off a little bit here since our opponent's gone. So let's see, how do we deal the most amount of damage? So 6, 8 lands. So we can emerge this onto the Deep-Fiend. If we play the Visionary, 8, 9, and untap a land, we could actually also emerge off of the Visionary, so I think that's better. Alright, drawing a land also helps. So 6, 7, so untap a land first. Emerge Decimator from the Visionary. And I think this is the most we could have dealt here. So just a casual 26 damage. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which has some cultivators for ramp and a recruiter. So worst case we can just start activating the recruiter. So yeah, I think we can keep this. It is missing an emerge creature, but I'm sure we can find one between our draw steps and the recruiter being activated. Blue-red, so the opponent might be packing quite a lot of removal. And I think we just lead with the Evolving Wilds. Even though we might miss out on a clue token from a Tireless Tracker, I think getting the tap land out of the way here makes sense. And turn 2 probably gonna go with the Cultivator, since we don't wanna get our Recruiter killed. Alright, Visionary is interesting. I actually don't hate playing the Visionary here, since we don't have actually anything too relevant to ramp into with the Cultivator, and if we play Cultivator here, it's likely our opponent kills it end of turn, while killing Elvish Visionary is less appealing for the opponent. That way we make them waste their 2 mana basically. Alright, Oath of Jace means our opponent is probably on a Sphinx's Tutelage deck, since there aren't too many decks where you would otherwise want to play Oath of Jace. So that means we kind of have to try and apply as much pressure as quickly as possible, since once the opponent does find Sphinx's Tutelage, they're gonna mill us out pretty quickly. And here we see another card that's often run with Sphinx's Tutelage, take inventory. So Duskwatch Recruiter seems like the play here. So we'll hit for 1. And now that we have a replacement Duskwatch Recruiter, it's not as bad if the first one dies. So let's see if the opponent did find a Sphinx's Tutelage. Instead, goes a extra turn, just kills our 2 creatures for 3 mana at instant speed here. Alright, Decimator is a good one to have access to, since that can close out the game pretty quickly. So here I think we just go Deathcap Cultivator plus Duskwatch. since their opponent just played a sweeper and they might not have another one. And I think we want to get the Duskwatch in play. Another argument maybe is to play the second Cultivator. That way next turn we can play the Duskwatch and activate it, which might be worth it. So actually I think I'll go with the Cultivator. It's pretty unlikely that we get to transform the Duskwatch anyways, since the opponent plays so many cheap spells. And if they do have a second sweeper, I would rather keep the Duskwatch in hand and they attack for the same amount of damage. The opponent is probably not going to present too many blocking creatures. Although they might be able to activate the Fumarole, I guess. Fiery Impulse. It's going to kill one of them. And Collective Defiance is going to kill the second one. And let's see what modes our opponent chooses. So they're gonna shuffle away our hand and deal damage to our creature, so kind of a gamble from the opponent. And I guess it kind of worked out for them since we didn't have the Duskwatch in play, but the Duskwatch would have died anyways, and this hand is actually not that bad. We have a Jace plus 2 nice payoff cards, so the question here is, do we want to play Jace in face of a Fumarole? Or do we want to maybe play Oath of Nissa and look for a cheap creature we can emerge onto next turn? I think we want to play Jace, because if we find some more lands, we might be able to start hardcasting these creatures. Evolving Wilds I don't think we want, but Elvish Visionary is not bad. So next turn we can go Elvish Visionary, and if we find another land we can also emerge the Wretched Gryff. So the Fumarole does get activated. It's gonna probably attack Jace for 4. So between the Elvish Visionary draw step and Jace, we probably should be able to find a land here. Alright, good. So let's plus Jace first, since we're gonna do that no matter what. I'll keep Nissa on top. We can play her next turn, as we can transform her right away. Play Elvish Visionary. Draw a card. Filigree Familiar is not bad, but I think I want to play out the Wretched Gryff here. Draws another card. And now we have a 3/4 in play that can potentially block the Fumarole. And looks like the opponent still hasn't found Sphinx's Tutelage. So that may be why they already left the game. They have a Jace, which is not bad. Since our deck doesn't really run any removal spells, we could bounce it with the Jace. Fumarole does get activated, and I think I'll block. We have plenty more creatures in hand. And if the opponent wants to trade, that's fine. Alright, so we can play Nissa and safely transform her since the opponent's tapped out. And then we could also play a Filigree's Familiar. Question is, do we want to bounce the opponent's Jace with our Jace, or do we keep plussing ours? Because we would be giving the opponent access to maybe another Collective Defiance, which I don't think I want to allow if we can avoid it. So, given that if our plan now is Nissa and Familiar and Oath of Nissa, since we'll have 7 mana, might as well play Oath of Nissa first, since that might change our play slightly. And maybe we find something better. Another Wretched Gryff, another Elder Deep-Fiend. I think I would prefer the Deep-Fiend here. And then we can play Nissa before playing our land. Get a forest. This shuffles our deck, so the cards we put on the bottom with Oath of Nissa do get shuffled back, so that's something we have to also consider when sequencing our cards. Play our land, transform Nissa. And I think we plus Nissa to see what we get. And get a land. And I think we minus here since we already have card advantage going with a Nissa, so we might as well use Jace to deal with the opponent's Jace. At least for a turn. While we keep developing our board, and next turn we can start using Elder Deep-Fiend. Opponent replays a Jace. And take inventory is gonna net them 2 cards here, since they already have one in the graveyard. So can they find a way to deal with our Jace perhaps? Or do they find their Sphinx's tutelage? Doesn't look like it. Alright, so I think we start by plussing with Jace. Put that on the bottom, find a land anyways. And I think we keep plussing the Nissa. Work up towards her ultimate, find a Primal Druid, which we can play and probably emerge onto it. So let's see, this costs 7, minus 2 is 5. So that leaves us with not enough mana to do anything else. If we emerge onto the Filigree Familiar, that's only 4 mana, so we could also play the Pilgrim's Eye, which I think I like more than playing Evolving Wilds here. So let's play the Pilgrim's Eye. Alright, Galvanic Bombardment. It's gonna kill the Familiar in response. That's fine. Still have a 3 casting cost creature we can emerge onto. Get a land out of our deck. And I think we say go. And Oath of Jace triggers, which is actually interesting since that basically gives us an upkeep step for Elder Deep-Fiend purposes. So we could use Deep-Fiend to tap down 4 lands, could also tap the Jace, but our opponent can tap Jace in response. So that doesn't really accomplish much. But I think Deep-Fiending and getting rid of 4 lands here might be worth it. Since we can deny our opponent some red mana here, so they might not be able to flash back the Collective Defiance from the graveyard. So Oath of Jace, actually a nice one to have when you are playing Elder Deep-Fiend. So the opponent does activate Jace, discarding take inventory, so they can now draw 3 cards with a single take inventory. If they have one in hand, they can draw 4. Instead they're gonna plus on our Deep-Fiend, which is fine. We also still have this Lumbering Falls we can activate. Alright, so let's plus Jace. Put that on the bottom. Tireless Tracker is a nice one. So let's play that first. Play Evolving Wilds, trigger the Tireless Tracker. Sacrifice Evolving Wilds. And Nissa plussing can also trigger the Tireless Tracker if we hit a land here. Instead we find Duskwatch Recruiter. Alright, so I think, let's see, we can activate Lumbering Falls and try and kill Jace, or we can emerge one of our creatures. Since the opponent does have Oath of Jace in play, we can do it on upkeep with the Deep-Fiend again. Although our opponent does have a lot of lands, so it's not like the Deep-Fiend is doing too much work. So I think trying to kill the Jace is probably better here. So let's move to combat. And that works, that's good. And we could emerge Wretched Gryff onto the Deep-Fiend, but I don't think that's worth it here. So we've got all our card advantage engines going. We've got Tireless Tracker, 2 Planeswalkers, Duskwatch in hand. So we just need to close out the game now. Doesn't look like our opponent found their Sphinx's Tutelage, which is one of the risks of playing Sphinx's Tutelage, since you only get 3 copies and without it it's very difficult to win. End of turn. Let's play our lands. I think we can go with Lumbering Falls here. Gotta make sure we have enough mana to still emerge whatever we want to. Yeah, let's play the Lumbering Falls. And plus Nissa. Let's see, Nissa's actually close to ultimating. Alright, Woodland Bellower, also not bad. So this can get us a Reclamation Sage, which can blow up a potential Sphinx's Tutelage. Plus Jace. Sylvan Advocate is nice, since it works well with the Lumbering Falls and actually the ultimate from Nissa as well. So let's see. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana. Emerging this off of a Primal Druid costs us 5, so we have 5 mana left. So we could go Sylvan Advocate plus sacrifice a clue. I think that seems fine. So we can start by sacrificing 1 clue here. Play the Sylvan Advocate. And move to combat. And I think we just say go here. And again on upkeep, I guess we can discard a forest. And on upkeep, I think we Elder Deep-Fiend here. And let's see, do we want to tap down red or blue? Guess these 3 for sure. And I guess we'll go with the red over the blue. Deny as much mana as possible. And we will find a land with Primal Druid. Trigger our Tireless Tracker yet again. And with Nissa going to ultimate, it's going to be difficult for the opponent to get out of this. Next turn we could play Woodland Bellower, get another Sylvan Advocate, ultimate our Nissa, and get a bunch of 10/10 elemental lands attacking our opponent, as well as 2 Elder Deep-Fiends and a Sylvan Advocate and a Tireless Tracker. Unless our opponent has something great for 3 mana, which I doubt they have. Alright, there's their Sphinx's Tutelage, just to prove that they were indeed a Sphinx's Tutelage deck. But we could also find a Reclamation Sage to destroy this. But since we are winning on this turn, we might as well try and do as much damage as possible. So let's play Woodland Bellower. get Sylvan Advocate out of our deck. Play a land. Plus Jace. And another Nissa, so we could actually ultimate. So those all become 10/10 lands, and then we can also play this new Nissa. Turn another land into a creature. And I guess this is good enough. Can also sacrifice a clue. And move to combat. And I think this is enough. Alright, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day.